Impact Interview is sponsored by the Pocono Mountains, where small town charm meets big adventures. Book your trip today by visiting PoconoMountains.com.
Welcome back to Nittany Game Week. Can't think of a better guest for our Impact interview than Sean McDonough. He's going to give us some fresh perspective on Penn State's opponent in the first round of the college football playoffs. But Sean, premier play-by-play announcer in sports, the Olympics, World Series, NHL, NCAA, March Madness, major championship tennis and golf. He does it all, including now the college football playoffs. Sean, thanks so much for the time.
Oh, my pleasure. Great to be with some old friends. I hope you guys are doing well. Happy holidays.
Same to you.
Yeah, emphasis on the old these days, Sean, right? That's right. Look, let's get into it right away. The 12-team expanded playoff, it has brought a lot of intrigue, a lot of drama to the late season and interest in the sport. Is that your sense as you've traveled around to some of the schools that maybe wouldn't have been part of the conversation end of the season when it was just 4 teams, now that it's 12? What's your sense of what this playoff has done for the sport?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's been great. I was always a proponent of expanding it beyond 2 and then beyond 4. The argument was always, well, you're going to diminish the regular season. The Ohio State-Michigan game won't mean anything if they both know they're going to get in. That was an example cited in recent years. We found out that the converse is true. It's made so many of these games at the end of the year that much more meaningful because there are so many teams playing to get into their conference championship games and maybe earn the automatic bid, or there are other teams that are just trying to make sure they're, in the top 10 or 11 to try to get one of the at-large bids. So I think it's great. I love the format. I love the 4 games on campus sites, and maybe it's just the luck of this first one, the way it turned out, but to have them be at the 4 sites that these 4 games are going to be played at is amazing. Yeah, I think it probably needs some tweaking. I'm not sure. Maybe the conference champions that get the automatic bid should be guaranteed the bye, because I think there's the perception that Arizona State and Boise State aren't as good as some of the other teams that have to play in this first round. But it's a lot better than what we had, and I'm super excited about it.
Pittsburgh Pirate fans may want to forget that you were on the call when Sid Ream slid home in Game 7 of the NLCS. Your job puts you in position to make some calls in games that people remember for a long, long time. What is the key for you in making those calls that captures the moment but doesn't overshadow it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, it's, I guess, to the introduction, I have been around a long time. I guess we're all old. If you guys are owning being old, I should own it too, since that was in 1992. But it was one of the great games, I think, in baseball history. I'm sorry for the Pirate fans that it ended up the way it did.
Thank you.
To answer your question, Jay, I really don't even think about it. I've been asked that question a lot, especially when I speak at communication schools. What's your philosophy to calling a big play? And I don't even think about it. I don't think you have time to think about it. I've said many times, if you have to think about it, the moment's gone. If Sid Bream's coming to the plate and here comes the throw and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this is a big play. This is going to decide which team goes to the World Series and which team goes home. This is going to be one of the great plays in baseball history. I better yell really loud because that's what I should do in this moment. And I should make my voice crack. You can't do all that. So I think it's like playing or coaching or officiating, whatever. It has to be instinctive in the moment because that's all you have time for. So I don't even think about it. I think you just go with the moment. It's kind of a physical reaction. It's an emotional reaction. We just had, you mentioned SMU. We had the Clemson-SMU ACC championship game. Clemson kicks the field goal in the last play of the game from 56 yards. I didn't know I had that much lung power, but you don't think about it. You just hope that you get it right. And then to your question, Jay, and then get out of the way, right? Call it, hopefully give it the appropriate call, the right excitement level, punctuate it, put it in perspective if you need to, the Clemson field goal. Clemson wins the ACC championship or whatever, and then stop talking because there's nothing you can say that's better than the pictures or the sound.
Hey, Sean, Tom Bradley here. You called the SMU Clemson ACC title game. Given all the chatter nationally about Penn State having an easy playoff path, what things jumped out to you about SMU that should concern PSU?
Yeah, a lot. I don't think it's easy at all. And I think a lot of the narrative going into that game against Clemson about SMU is a little unfair, especially if they lose, did they deserve to be one of the at-large teams? I think they're one of the best teams in the country. I think they're really good on both sides of the ball. They're usually really good on special teams too. They've had a couple of hiccups, but for the most part, they've been solid in that area. They have a really dangerous 1-2 punch in the quarterback and in the running back, Rashard Smith, who to me is a really dynamic playmaker. As you guys know, he's a first-year transfer into SMU from Miami. He was a wide receiver at Miami. He hadn't played running back since he was in the 5th grade or something like that. And it's amazing how well he's taken to it. He just has some instinctive feel for the holes and where the runs are supposed to go. And he's a dynamic playmaker. I think we saw that. Even though they lost the game, they played probably the worst quarter of their season in the first quarter. They might have been a little jittery at the start of that game against Clemson. They had a strip sack. They had a punt return and a penalty at the end of the punt return that gave Clemson another short field. They fell behind, and it looked like it might be a rout. And I think we saw how good they are the rest of that game. They really outplayed Clemson from about the end of the first quarter on. I think they're very dangerous, very talented, deserve to be in.
Notre Dame in South Bend against Indiana, an in-state rival. This new era, what are you looking forward to the most, and what does that mean to you to be part of history like this, to have the first ever CFP first round game?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? It would have been exciting to do the first CFP game on a campus, regardless of where it was. And as I said a moment ago, any of these 4 locations, it would have been special. I mean, they're 4 of the great college football venues, 4 of the great programs in college football history hosting these games. But I think particularly to have it be at Notre Dame, just with all of the tradition and history of Notre Dame football and Notre Dame Stadium. It's going to be a cold, maybe snowy night. And, as someone who grew up an Irish Catholic kid in South Boston, Massachusetts, who wanted to go to Notre Dame, I always say God has a plan for our lives. And Notre Dame had a plan for my life, which did not include admitting me to their fine university, which turned out to be part of God's plan, because I wound up at Syracuse, which was the right place for me, wanting to be a play-by-play broadcaster. That's sort of become the cradle of play-by-play announcers. So I'm really excited about it. It would have been special had it been anywhere, but I think to particularly be at that venue with a great matchup. It's an in-state rivalry. Indiana's a great story. There's a billion storylines to this game. One of the things, he's a friend of yours, that I discovered in the research, the last non-NBC game, that's another part of what makes this special for us. The NBC's had the broadcast rights for Notre Dame football's home game since 1991. Matter of fact, the first NBC game from Notre Dame Stadium in 1991 was against Indiana. And that's the last time they played. They haven't played since, until Friday night, this coming Friday night. The last non-NBC home game at Notre Dame Stadium was, you guys remember who it was?
Penn State beat #1 Notre Dame.
That is correct, with the great Ron Franklin and Gary Danielson and Neil Lomax on the call. I know that this is probably a layup for you. Do you know who caught the game-tying touchdown pass for Penn State?
Yes,
to set
I
up
do.
The game?
The defensive coordinator at Notre Dame right now, Al Golden.
Correct.
Look at
Correct.
this.
I mean, you can't make that up, right?
No,
I mean,
you
Al's done
can't.
such a fantastic job at Notre Dame, coaching their defense. Yeah. He reminds me of Tom Bradley. He's one of the all-time greats.
Well, thank you.
And I know Scrap's proud of what Al Golden's doing there, but he's a Broyles Award finalist here. So there's just so much stuff. I mean, I've got pages and pages of notes all over my desk here, and stuff that's never going to come close to getting in. But I thought that was some interesting history.
Yeah, so talking about your career, you grew up as the son of the legendary Will McDonough, who certainly was a star at the Boston Globe, but also had a tremendous national presence. What was some of the best advice he gave you as you embarked on your own career?
Wow, it's a great question. Yeah, I guess I can relate to your life, right, Jamie?
Exactly
My
right.
dad was sort of in his space, kind of a legendary person. The best advice that he gave me, in all honesty, was get into broadcasting, not into newspapers. Because, I was in high school in the late 1970s, and even then he saw that newspapers were kind of starting to struggle, and that enterprises like ESPN and all these regional pay networks like Nesson that we have in New England, they were just coming into existence. I think ESPN came on the air in 1980. which was my first year in college. So that was great insight. And then just, how to conduct yourself, to be honest, to work hard, to treat people well. When my dad died, we had his wake in the Boston Garden. And the only reason we did was because the people who owned the Boston Garden called me and said, your dad is so loved in this city. This is going to be the only place to have, big enough to have it. And it wasn't because he was a great sports writer and he was the first information man on TV, on the old NFL Today. It was because of the kind of person that he was, his involvement in the community and in charity and all the random acts of kindness that he performed. So, he set a great example for how life should be lived. By the way, I don't know if you know this, Jay, your dad told me one time when I did a game up there that he wanted to thank my dad because my dad got him his first actual contract that he had with Penn State, because my dad wrote he was going to be the coach of the New England Patriots. And Penn State said, we better give Joe like a signed contract.
Yeah. It was a
Every time I
handshake
did a
deal up
game
until
up
then.
there and talk to your dad, he would mention that story to me. Tell your dad I said thank you the next time you talk to him.
Well, I can tell you, Sean, I did a lot of handshake deals with Coach Paterno over the years. But anyway, as you get ready for games like this, what are some of the keys to your preparation for calling a game, and how different is the preparation across the wide range of sports you cover?
Yeah, it's a great question. College football is the most intensive. It's just because there's so many guys, first of all, on each team that may play. There could be, as you guys know, 80 plus guys who dress on each team. I got out my SMU chart because it was a little while ago, a week and a half ago, as we're chatting, and I wanted to make sure I was still fresh on that because my mind is all loaded up with Notre Dame and Indiana. But we make these spotting charts. Like this is my spotting chart for SMU's offense. It has the offensive line and the quarterbacks and the receivers and the tight ends and kickers and coaches. And then you flip it over, the defense is on the other side. And then I would have one for Clemson that I take to this. And so that takes most of the week. It's watching recent games that they played, as you know, Scrap, because you were in a million of these production meetings, talking to the coordinators, the head coach, the best players on either side of the ball. In this day and age, there's so much you can read. I've got an Indiana press thing here that's, I don't know how many pages long. ESPN has a research department that sends us a lot of stuff. So you're not lacking for information. If anything, you can get overloaded by it. And you really need to avoid that in a game like this because, in a game like this, it's all about the game, right? They're playing to get to the next round of the playoff. In the case of the game we're doing, to go play Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. So the other stuff, he has a great stamp collection, or his mom was Miss Ohio or whatever. Not that those things aren't important, but, they're less important in a game like this. It really needs to be your focus on the down-to-down football part of it.
Really appreciate the time. You got a flight to catch, but we reserve the right. We had a couple more for you, but we reserve the right to call you back and just talk some more.
You want to go lightning round?
This is fantastic stuff. We're spinning these tales. This is great. But thanks so much for the time. We really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Always great to see you. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a healthy and joyous New Year to all of you and everybody watching.